All right, so I've been saving this story time to share with you my experience of what happened when we flew from Atlanta to Lagos a few weeks ago. So, in the course of this flight, we got an hour into the flight, and all of a sudden you hear on the announcements that they're in need of an EpiPen. And, basically, does anybody have an EpiPen? If anybody has an EpiPen, please identify or signal the flight attendant. And so the first time that was asked, wasn't anything to it. But then it was asked 2 more times with a little bit more urgency. And so I turned to my husband and I said, something's not right. They're asking for an EpiPen. And so we're going back and forth about this EpiPen. And, my husband asked me if I needed an EpiPen. If I was about to die and I needed an EpiPen and you had an EpiPen, would you share it with me? And I said, of course, no doubt about it. And if it were me, I would expect you to share it with me. So we're laughing about this and going back and forth. Then all of a sudden, we start seeing the flight attendants start moving fast. Then the announcement is, are there any medical support people on the flight? And so we see a couple of people, identify themselves and they go behind us to the back of the plane. At this point, I turned to him, I said, oh, this shit getting real. So what happens is that we have a lot of commotion going on. Then all of a sudden, our screen that shows you where you're flying to changes, and it then says, instead of flying to Lagos, we're flying to San Juan, Puerto Rico. But nobody says a word. Nobody says anything to us. At this point, the people that are seeing this are starting to chatter and look around and like, what the hell is going on here? And then we start hearing the rumors that somebody in the back of the plane is sick. And so we're like, sitting there saying to ourselves, okay, this is crazy. They're not even going to tell us that they're redirecting the flight. This has got to be really bad if they're redirecting the flight to San Juan. And so there's another announcement for medical staff. This is the second announcement for medical staff. Then all of a sudden you see one of these flight attendants, fly like down the row. And we were like, what the hell is going on? Because nobody's saying anything to us. We're sitting there, we're listening, and then all of a sudden everything is calm, everything is peaceful. And then the actual video that shows the flight in progress that was going to San Juan changes to Lagos. And I said, oh, thank God, everything must be fine, that we're going back to Lagos, everything's okay. So I'm sitting there talking to my husband. And when I tell you, I have never experienced something like this in my life. And the thought of it is still like just ringing in my mind. And I've talked to some of my friends that I know that are flight attendants, and they said this is the norm. I'm talking to him, and all of a sudden you hear somebody say, coming through. And literally, they're carrying this lady's body in the blankets that they give you to cover up on the flight down the road past us. And everybody, as she's coming by, as they're carrying her by, just breaks out into hollers. And there are a lot of African individuals on the flight, and they all of a sudden are starting to chant and say prayers. And we're sitting there like, this is unbelievable. Like at this point, we are literally maybe 2 hours into the flight right now. And we got another 8 hours to go. But we thought it was 8. It's actually going to be another 10 because they diverted the flight, and because of all of this stuff, we end up having to have a longer flight. But to make matters worse, the flight gets into Lagos. We're leaving off the plane. We're walking out, and I see this woman and this other woman sitting in first class. And this woman is asleep with the blanket up to like here. And I'm saying to myself, why in the hell are they still on the flight? Like literally, everybody's getting off this flight. Why are they still on the flight? And it turns out that was the lady that died. They put her in first class, sat her up in first class, put a blanket up to her neck, and let her lay there as if she was sleeping. To make matters worse, and I can't make this shit up, we finally get through customs and we have to go into an area to get our visas approved. And we're there, and we have to be sitting there with the medical staff. One person was a doctor. The other one was a registered nurse. They were the ones that were assisting in the back. And they sat there and they told us what happened. And what happened was this lady had some kind of medical issue and they didn't know what it was. So they gave her an EpiPen and it didn't work. They gave her another EpiPen and it didn't work. But they couldn't find the defibrillator on the flight. This is what these individuals told us. They couldn't find the defibrillator. And then when they finally found the defibrillator, supposedly it wasn't charged. It wasn't working properly. And so, of course, my lawyer brain is going, and I said, wow. I said, her family may have a case against the airline. I don't want to say the airline, but because I want to fly again. But the family may have a claim against the airline. And when we got to Africa and we shared this with some of the people that were there, they told us in Africa, they don't do that. They don't file claims. They don't do that. They just accept it and they move on, and that's it. And I thought to myself, wow, because I have to imagine that this family, because I was traumatized, my husband was traumatized, it's been weeks and we're still talking about it. I have to imagine that this family is still going through a lot of trauma of experiencing that on a flight and having to sit there with their loved one's body for 10 hours. And so that's my experience of someone dying on a flight in the middle of the flight. And like I said, I heard that was not something that's uncommon, but it definitely was uncommon to me. And it puts me in another mindset when I talk about really helping people that have experienced trauma like that.